I'm Lorna McPherson and I'm a dairy consultant and nutritionist with SAC Consulting. We're here at SRUC's Crichton Royal Farm at Dumfries to talk about dry cow management. There are many important factors to managing the dry cow successfully to ensure a trouble-free calving and introduction into the milking herd. While nutrition is critically important at this time, there are many housing and management factors that are also vital to the success of a trouble-free calving and early lactation performance. The 4 factors we're going to cover are having adequate feeding space, cow comfort in relation to space in straw yards and cubicle housing, minimising social stress, and care of the cow after calving with effective post-calving checks. So when it comes to feed space, the more the better. Cows are social animals and they like to eat together. Ideally aim for a minimum of 75 centimetres of trough space per animal, but 85 centimetres would be better in the close-up period in the last 3 weeks before calving to maintain good intakes. Feed space will be especially important for less dominant animals and smaller heifers. One of the ways we can ensure that we've got adequate feed space and checking that accessibility to feed is good is looking at room and fill scores. Ideally, dry cows should have a room and fill score of 4 or 5. Access to water is also vitally important to maintain good intakes. Have at least one watering point in the dry cow pen to reduce competition, and the rule of thumb is to provide a minimum of 10 centimetres of water trough space per animal. When it comes to lying space and cow comfort, when we're looking at cubicle housing, we want to make sure that the cubicles for dry cows are slightly wider than they are for milking cows to accommodate their wider stature. For typical Holstein Friesian cows, the width of the cubicle should be a minimum of 50 inches wide. The lying surface is also really important to encourage good lying times. We want to provide adequate bedding as well to keep the beds dry, and that will minimise the risk of mastitis infections during the dry period. You can test the comfort of the lying surface by doing the knee drop test. If it hurts your knees when you drop to the cubicles, it'll also hurt the cow's knees and could discourage good lying times. Lying times are important to keep the pressure and weight off the feet, which will help reduce the risk of lameness. When it comes to space in straw yards, aim to provide a minimum of 1.25 metres squared per 1,000 litres of milk production. That means a 10,000 litre cow needs 12.5 metres squared of lying space on the straw yard, and up to a third more for feeding and loafing area. Keeping the beds dry is also really important to minimise mastitis infections during the dry period. So again, that's one of the reasons why having adequate space is important, and also clean out straw yards every 3 weeks. We also want to aim to minimise social stress and the mixing of unfamiliar animals during the dry period as much as possible. So it's important that we dry off more than one cow at a time. Try and dry off groups of cows together, even in small groups, so that we're not just introducing one cow on her own into the dry cow pen with unfamiliar pen mates. This kind of social stress can have a short-term reduction in feed intake. Having one dry cow pen is a benefit in that there are less moves for the cow, but 2 dry cow groups will also be beneficial in terms of helping to meet the nutritional requirements closer to calving. If we are moving cows between groups, try and move a small number together rather than just one cow at a time. Ideally, heifers should be managed in a separate group pre and post calving, but this is not always practical in smaller herds. Aim to introduce heifers into the dry cow group and onto the dry cow ration 6 weeks before calving. Ideally, again, space is important for these smaller animals to reduce competition at the feed fence. The aim is to have facilities to accommodate between 130 to 140% of the average number of calvings each month, so that during busy times the facilities are not overstocked. Post-calving care and checks of the cow are really important after calving. We want to make sure that the cow is well hydrated after calving, as she loses a lot of fluids during the process. So aim to provide at least 20 litres of warm water and also provide access to the milking cow ration as soon as possible to help encourage early feed intake. Also look at the cow's demeanour, how willing she is to get up and eat, and milk yield for the first 5 days. If there are any causes for concern, look at taking a rectal temperature to check for any signs of inflammation, infection, which could be caused by things like mastitis or uterine infection. The success of dry cow management over the transition period can be assessed by looking at the incidence of transition diseases such as milk fever and retained fetal membranes. Ideally, their incidence should be less than 5%. For more information on dry cow management, we've produced a fact sheet which is available on the FAST website.